Welcome to Leapcast. I'm your host, Dr. George James. Leap stands for leaders, entertainers, athletes, and performers. And I'm on a journey to connect with high achievers and highlight their unexamined human moments. Tune in to learn how these high-achieving Leap individuals were able to reach their greatest potential, face their most difficult challenges, and embrace the human moments that helped them along the way. If you want to get the episode highlights directly in your email, then head to theleapcast.com right now to subscribe. Welcome everybody back to Leapcast, where we talk entertainers, athletes, and performers. Always happy for my guests to come through. Another friend of mine, someone I've known for a little bit, and now I think officially Dr. Lonnie Hunter. I mean, stuff when I don't know you, when I haven't seen you, on some new things. So, Lonnie, thanks for joining me today. How are you?
Man, I'm good. No complaints at all. How are you?
I am great. So, there's a couple things that we like to do in just the conversation. We do this thing called Leap Story, where we just learn more you and the early days. And so I want to get there, and I definitely want to get to the whole doctor part and then the everything. So, tell us, wherever you want to start in terms of your Leap story, like the early days, what were the things that kind of shaped you, formed you, wherever you want to go there.
Early days, as far as being shaped and formed, I'd have to go back to when my mom was alive. She was a gospel singer, and she did a lot of stuff with the caravans. Albertina Walker is my godmother, which a lot of people don't know. So those early days, kind of shaped me into this gospel thing. So when my mom died when I was 9, I just kept singing in an effort to keep her name alive. It wasn't really because I was super deep or anything like that.
It's just that's what mama did.
Right. That's what mama did. And I just wanted to make sure people did not forget her. So, it kind of morphed into what it is today just because God had a plan. But at 9, you don't really see what that plan is. So yeah, I'd say that was where it all kind of kicked off.
So, if you don't mind, say more of that. So you would travel with your mom. She was a gospel singer. So does that mean like from what age to 9 were you like traveling with her?
All ages, like from the womb till 9.
Boy, you coming with me.
Right. I was there when I was still in her stomach. I was there feeling the vibrations of the spirit.
That's awesome. So you would travel, do you know like how far you'd go or the different places you'd go? Do you remember any of that?
Most of that during that age, I didn't do a lot of out of state traveling. She would just leave me at home with my dad and my sisters. I'm the youngest of 5, and there's 10 years between me and the sister above me. So wow. She had a lot of built-in babysitters for me.
Wow. So the youngest of 5 and 10 years. So that means everybody thought they was your parent.
Everybody thought they were my parent. And I'm the only boy.
Really? So all those above you?
Everybody above me is females, sisters.
I did not know that. All right.
Yeah.
So I know this from just some of the families and friends I know who are just super talented. Did you start singing?
My first solo was at 7.
Okay.
And that was when my mom made me do it. And when I found out that I, could kind of carry a tune. But at 15 is when I had my first minister of music job. Huh. Oddly enough, it was at St. Mark, where the Voices of St. Mark kind of came into place. I actually started there as minister of music as a little boy, had no intentions on, being recording artist and all that kind of stuff. So that gives you kind of how long I was actually at St. Mark.
Wow. Yeah. And so just for everybody, St. Mark is in Chicago, right?
Correct. Right outside of Chicago.
All right. And so I'm curious, does that mean everybody can sing in your family? Am I going to hate your family right now?
You are not, because that's not true.
Okay.
My mom could sing, my dad could not sing. So we kind of split on pulling that talent.
Okay.
However, my sister did have a singing group that they sang together. But they spent most of the time kind of laughing at themselves. I got one sister who was an R&B singer, and she's
Okay.
actually the other singer in the family.
Okay.
But then my other sisters, no.
All right. So not everybody can, because look, I said I have some folks that I know whole family can sing. I'm like, just I mean, obviously it's not just, as you know, you'll share more. It's not just a talent. You have to work at it. It's a skill. You got to build it. But some people just naturally, the sounds that come out their mouth is just good.
Yeah, it's a God-given gift. Now you can learn how to sing, but there are families where it's just a part. Like just like some families have a whole lot of musicians.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just in you.
So I want to kind of come back you because this is something that obviously some people experience and not everyone does. But you say you lost your mom at 9. Like, what happened for you like after that point?
It was devastating because every summer I would go to Arkansas and spend the summer uh, down there with my cousins. But my birthday is in July, which is in the summer.
Okay.
And my mom died on my birthday, July 20th.
Really?
And that for years after that, I just couldn't take my birthday coming. It just had too many opposite feelings,
Yeah.
opposite of what I should have been feeling. So when I'm counseling people and all of that, and I tell them through grief that although the memory never leaves, it does get easier to navigate.
Yeah.
Um, and that's because not only because it's true, but because I live with it. Every
Yeah.
every year on my birthday, even now, I still remember the scenario. It doesn't break me down or take me to a bad place or anything, but I can remember the scenario.
You mind sharing?
I was at my aunt's house, who was my mother's sister, and they were having a birthday party for me. And she had this long hallway in her house, and I was walking down the hallway to get to the family room for them to do the big surprise thing. But when I walked in, there was no surprise. It didn't happen. The people were there, but there was no surprise. So I was wondering what was wrong. Oddly enough, my mom had cancer that they hid from me. So I didn't even know that she was sick enough
Yeah.
to think that direction.
Yeah.
So me hearing that she passed away was out of the blue. Now my sisters lived through her illness.
Yeah.
I mean, or just watched her kind of disintegrate. The only thing I knew is that there was a hospital bed at some point later in the house.
Yeah.
Didn't know the seriousness of it or anything like that. So it was 100% shock. And I can just remember myself running back down that same long hallway to just get away from people, because even to this day, I can't believe that they decided to tell me in a room full of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of devastating.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways, like you said, deal with grief, right? And talk about it or not talk about it. I mean, this thing in families where we try to say like, we don't want to tell it, we don't want to tell folks because we're trying to protect them. But when they find out, it's a big surprise.
It's
And it's
just the opposite, right? I
for you to
agree.
have that way and to learn in front of everybody. Hey, what else could you do? Like you didn't have any place to grieve, and you're 9. Like, no, let me go find a corner somewhere.
And on your birthday,
Right.
it was awful.
Yeah, I can imagine that was awful. I mean, I lost my mother um last year in 21, and as a 42-year-old, I still felt that it was too early, right? Like, compared to my peers and the people
Yeah,
I know who might have mothers or grandmothers, right? So to lose your mother at 9, right? You still have to navigate. Now you had older sisters who probably stepped into that role, and probably aunties and other folks, but it's still not your mama.
yeah, they 100% stepped into that role. My dad was still in the picture, of course, and he's the one that had the long life because he died at 96.
Nice. Yeah.
But yeah, my sisters, the one right above me, of course, she was still in high school, so she ended up being mother, having to take care of me because my dad still worked and cook and all of that kind of stuff. She was kind of forced to grow up quickly.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So, and then I moved with one of my sisters who I was with through junior high all the way through college. She really stepped into that role, and it's because of my sisters that I even have a hope today.
Wow. Wow. I think this just it talks about I mean, there's the strength of family can just step up and be there. Now, some of our families aren't always great, and sometimes they do some to get on our nerves. But every
Right.
now and then, we can have some family that can be there for us and support us. And so all this is happening in your early childhood. You realize that you have this gift, your ability to sing. It's already in your family. You become music minister of music at 15. So what happens from like, teenage to on? You mentioned college. Like what did you do or what happened the rest of that journey?
Well, while I was minister of music, I was not ever singing. I was always the musician, and
Uh,
people never knew that I can play because today, all you see me do is sing or direct. So during those years, all I did was play for them. Um, I went through high school and then graduated high school as a junior and went off to the Air Force.
okay.
So there are a lot of life things that happened, during those years where it pulled me from the church, and then I kind of came back and went to college and got back to the church. It was a lot back and forth. So I served in the Air Force, and then I went to college at Western, and after college is kind of when I stepped into a new place of
Okay.
what people recognize me to be today.
Okay.
Yeah.
And and I've seen just knowing you that you did, spend some time in the military, and that was a part of your service to the country. And I know like a lot of people wouldn't know that about you, right? They wouldn't see you
Yeah.
and know that that was a part of your life and but I know it's something that you've been, proud of and that you've shared. And I'm wondering, was there other people that was in the military? Was this something that you just decided that was the best thing to do at that moment?
Um, the reason I even went was not because of a decision I made. It was a decision my sister made for me because she knew that my father wouldn't be able to pay for college after paying for so many daughters to go to college.
Yeah. You literally
So
was last on the line.
absolutely. And she knew that, and that was the sister I was living with at the time. So she put me into the National Guard. She encouraged me to go to the National Guard. I graduated high school as a junior, went to the National Guard, basic training, all of that, so that when I went to college, I would be with my regular graduating class.
Oh, wow.
And that's what paid for college.
Wow.
But I'm going to show you how God orchestrates a talent and a gift that he gives you. I went into the Air Force to be a military policeman.
Oh,
I was walking through after tech school. I was walking through the hangar where the planes were, and the Air Force jazz band was rehearsing. I stopped to listen because, of course, I like music.
right.
The guy who was over them told me I had to leave unless I could sing because the guy who was the lead vocalist had just gotten out of the Air Force. I said, "Yeah, I can sing." I sang Prince, When Doves Cry.
Stop. You hired.
And let me tell you, man, how crazy it got. From that moment on, they changed my job description. I never became a policeman.
What?
All I did for the next 8 years was travel the world and sing as the lead vocalist for the Air Force Jazz Band. Who knew that that was even a job to sign up for?
Yeah, no, I would not have. I would, all the different. I have people, I have family in the military. Uh, that's not one of the job descriptions I hear them talk about, right? Like,
Right. Who goes to the recruiter and say, "I want to be the lead vocalist"? They'd be like, "Would you get out?"
right, right. Like, get out my office.
Right, right. Yeah, so
Wow.
that sustained me, man, and paid for college and all of that kind of stuff. And it was just God making room. It was,
Yeah.
God orchestrating it because I didn't have any reason to be in that area at that time, other than I just heard this music and that's what drew me to that space.
So your
So,
family, who, or in particular your mom and some of your sisters who had this talent that you started to build and nurture early in your life. Now, some years later, you're in the military and you can just like you at the right time in the right moment get the job interview that you didn't even know was a job interview
right.
for the next.
Exactly. Exactly, man. It was definitely when I hear people say your steps are ordered,
Yeah.
it has a whole different meaning for me because I really would have been doing something completely different now. because it's not something that I ran after,
Yeah.
something that I ran to because I was pushed into it. You know what I'm saying? Out of God's orchestration.
I totally imagine, right? Like, yeah, you become a military police person, or maybe, your things, and like, good job. Lots of people do that. You do whatever, but like, I go back to like how people talk about putting in your 10,000 hours, right? Like, so the start of like really building, your, really honing in, and how like 8 years, that,
Yeah,
right? And how like God's blessing plus you putting in the time, it had to have prepared you for like more, right?
it
Like,
did.
and I'm wondering, when you came out, did you say like, all right, I'm done with singing, or were you like, no, I'm ready to do more?
Well, it kind of morphed because there I didn't sing gospel, of course, because it wasn't a gospel band. But coming home, because it was, first of all, it was the National Guard, so I would
Yeah.
go a weekend a month and 2 weeks out of the year. But in the time that I wasn't with them, of course, I was gospel.
Yeah.
So when I got out, the only thing that I stopped doing was R&B music.
Oh,
Yeah, I kept being musical, and it taught me a whole lot of things as it relates to orchestration and how to achieve a specific sound that I uh, put on top of what I did gospel wise, and it kind of worked for me. So it was definitely a training ground.
and did it pay for?
It paid for college, and it was a wonderful thing because it paid for college and it pays you. So now, what's crazy is when I got to college, I signed up for this class. It was called Heritage Ensemble that a graduate student was teaching. He graduated, and they asked me if I wanted to teach this class. So, as a sophomore in college,
uh,
I was in college and I was a teacher giving legitimate grades to the people who was a part of Heritage Ensemble. And the way they paid me was to pay me for pay my room and board. So the Air Force paid for tuition, books,
nice.
XYZ, and then this job that just came out of nowhere because the dude graduated. I was so unqualified for because I'm a sophomore. What do I know about giving you some grades or a lesson plan? Don't ask me
Right.
about none of that.
Wow. Wow. So right. So then that means, yes, college was paid for
Yes,
all these skills and abilities. Now at
yes.
that, I mean, I don't, maybe it's a little bit ago, but can you remember how that felt like having these opportunities that seem like it's just falling in your lap, like it's just happening to you?
That college thing was incredibly empowering. All of the, you know, and as you counsel now and as you give advice or as people come to you and kind of want to talk through some things, I see what I went through as an adult before I was an adult.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Being over these people's careers because they took my class.
Yeah.
It kind of trained me, even though it was music, it still kind of trained me for, you know, navigating people through life and what class should I take, what class shouldn't I take. They always thought I was older than I was. And by the time they found out, we were already in.
It was
So
already too
forget
late.
about it. That's right, right.
You already got your grade. Deal with it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Oh man, that's awesome. Uh, and so all right, so all this stuff is happening. It sounds like things are just building on each other, and I just keep thinking about like what's really been impactful for me in my life is the thought about like your gift will make room for you, right? This whole thought about being whatever skills, talents, abilities, that opportunities will come,
Yeah,
opportunities will because of that, and it sounds like that was of your path. Well,
it was 100%. And it has not stopped.
of course
It has
not.
not. It has not stopped. This thing that I've been doing for McDonald's for their tour, this is my 8th year with them.
Wow.
But the first year was a fluke. Um, Erica Campbell was the host that year, and they came to Philadelphia, and she didn't feel well. Well, as you know, what my show came out of Philadelphia around that time, and they called the station and asked me if I would come and just do Philadelphia. I
Mm.
went and did it for free. Philadelphia turned into Philly and Charlotte, then Charlotte and DC, and then now 8 years later, a contract that is really, really nice.
Come on, McDonald's.
But the thing is, it's not something I went after. It was something that came to me. And one of the things that I've been learning is that when opportunities come to you, they're not necessarily coming to you for you to take advantage of the person with the opportunity or that's offering the opportunity. Because if they had said, "Can you come do Philly?" and I said, "Well, I charge this amount," that would have put them in a different space for me. And I may not have been their choice moving forward because of how I set them off with a price tag that didn't match what they were desiring. You have to know what you bring to the table at the time.
Yeah.
So it's one thing to be demanding and not in demand. You,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
so,
No, there's a
so
lot of people out there that think they're in demand, but they're not.
yes. And so now what I can command to say that this is what I charge was different than
Yeah.
for a McDonald's.
Yeah.
Now, if I was saying to some church event in Philly because I was on the radio, you could say something and people were like, yeah, because you bring advertising, people know your
Yeah.
name, blah, blah. But McDonald's is corporate. They didn't know anybody on the tour, to tell you the truth.
They just sponsoring.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, that was a lesson that continues to be learned by
I love
me
that.
for me every year that they ask me to come back.
I love that. And I love how, and as we grow and mature, allow ourselves to see the lesson, to see it, like we can really take value of it. And the
Yeah,
fact that, like, it only expands, right? Like lesson in a different way, right? Like the McDonald's situation is like the jazz band in the military, right? Like if you're not
100%.
like if you can't meet, do the audition in that moment and like kill it, that's what opens up all the 8 military, the 8 years with McDonald's. I mean, I think that's great that you've been able to do that. Now, one of the things that I think is, really great and interesting about you is that, and maybe, people might not look at it this way, but I think like you came up in the gospel industry when it was the choir director like heyday. Like, I mean, there was choir directors everywhere, and like, that's what people knew, right? You knew the choir director or you knew the main person, and then the people that was with them.
Right.
And it has shifted in some ways, right? And there's still some out there, but I guess like what I'm curious about is like, what was that like for you coming up, or when did that start for you, right? Like, like I don't know, like post military, when did you start to, okay, I'm going to get into this and start to move, and I'm curious about what that era was like for you.
It was another fluke.
Don't call this
George,
it's a
I'm
fluke.
telling you, I cannot make this stuff up. When the Voices of St. Mark were doing well, they were called the Voices of St. Mark because it was a church choir. It was not my choir.
No.
We went and did a choir competition for Wrigley Spearmint Gum. And in that competition, the way they introduced every choir was the choir director's name and whoever they were singing with.
Wow.
So that's where Lonnie Hunter and the Voices of St. Mark came from. We won the competition, so the name stuck. Every time we went someplace after that, it was called that. To the appreciation of the pastor, had he been any less secure in his own self,
Yeah.
it would have created a divide.
Yeah.
But the pastor, Bishop Jordan at the time, was so secure in what he did and what his calling was, he was not affected by the choir being called Lonnie Hunter and the Voices of St. Mark. Because the only time I would let anybody call us that is if we went out somewhere.
Yeah.
If we ever went with him while he was preaching, I never let that be the
Right.
case.
Right.
I'm there as Sunday morning. We don't do that on Sunday morning. Now they sounded the same on Sunday
Right.
morning, but it wasn't the kind of a you need to be introduced kind of situation.
So you go to this competition, you win it, which we're gonna talk about that. So had to get to a certain place for you to win. And I think the part that sometimes people may know, right? Like the work ethic that it takes, like, and the standard that you probably have. Like I know that you have. How did you develop of what you expected for yourself and those around you?
I think my examples had a lot to do with it, i.e., my sisters when I was younger. the military, as I got older, were all discipline type situations. I was the dean of students for Chicago Public Schools for 10 years before I moved to Jersey. So that experience was another type of discipline. And then when you take that into the church, you're able to deal with the discipline of several personalities at
Yes.
once. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not like, oh my God, everybody is just in love with you, because that's not the case. Everybody has their own opinion of how things should go, how things should work. And if you, at that time, being one of the younger people in the room, are in a place of authority and you're making these decisions, you have to kind of know how to navigate people, because if you fail at people, you fail.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can imagine. And I'm gonna come back to the choir director thing, but like I've known that you've been someone where excellence and hard work has been important. The reason why I'm highlighting that is that you know obviously you've done this work for God and in the church, but not to minimize that you've also worked hard. You've also put in the effort. You've also had a requirement and a discipline
Yeah.
that allows that to happen. And I guess I'm curious more personally. I see right the navigate personalities. Like you've probably had people who want to be a part, but maybe they weren't the most talented. How did you how you navigate that?
It was real strange to me for the Voices of St. Mark, because it was a church choir. And churches have a thing that you don't audition for church choirs. Whosoever will, let them come. So you just kind of have to know where to place people so that they're camouflaged. Because I promise you, everybody that was up there could not sing. But the end result is what mattered, what the people heard.
Yeah.
So for recordings, I didn't take the whole choir into the studio to do any of those recordings. It was the people who could sing. But live, you just have to place people right. And one of the things, and I hope some people that may be listening to this can understand this. After a while, the people who would come to the choir would come with a level of talent because of what you were presenting to them. So
Mm,
people who just could not sing were intimidated by what they saw, because there was excellence up there.
yeah.
So if I just can't sing, it's not like I'm getting in the choir because ain't nothing else to do. I'm not getting in that choir because it ain't
Nice.
nothing else to do, because I
Right.
can't do that.
Right. Right. And I appreciate there's a standard, right? Like there's a way that like I know what the product is, and the product has been consistent, right? So like, just like anything, any brand are connected to, right? We most likely are connected to it, hopefully, because of the consistent results. We go to that
Right.
store where we buy that clothing and else because it's consistent. And like as a choir, it was a consistent, excellent product. So you attracted people who wanted to be on that level, and other people who would say like, yeah, nah, that's not me right now. I'm not gonna do
Right. Right. Even when I would ask people, can you sing? They'd be like, no.
that.
Like immediately. Not I can sing a little bit, or I can hold a note. It was just no. And I appreciated it.
It's funny, and so in my in college, things that I did was that I was part of our gospel ensemble for 4 years, and I was president for two. And
Really?
yeah. And Beth Winslow, she was actually our choir director during
Wow.
that time. And one of the things that I valued is it was bringing people together to it. That I think was one of my master skills, right? It's like in a predominant university, it's the most diverse group on campus. And people from everywhere, all different backgrounds, and a lot of the time was recruiting, and or at least I would hear somebody, and I was like, hey, you should join the gospel ensemble, and you should join the gospel ensemble. That was just, and I bring that up because it was great to kind of bring people together for like a certain mission, a certain cause, a
Sure.
certain experience. And I guess like as a choir director, where you have had to bring people together, keep them together, manage their personalities, like what has that been like for you, like to be the one to kind of hold all those people together?
One of the things I had to learn very quickly is that everybody has a strength. So just because you may not be leading a song, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be up here. You may be excellent at organizational skills, which we still need. You may be excellent at bookkeeping skills. Now, you may not be the best alto up here, but what you can do, we do need.
Right.
You feel me? So that's one of the things that I had to learn quick, is because it was when the lights, camera, action people become the lights, camera, action people because of the people that do the work when the lights are off.
100%.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh
So
yeah, all the way.
yeah, I had to learn that, and it was a great lesson that is still helping me.
I think that, yeah, I think that happens. And, I think about my own life and career, and I know for you, like, it is the people who have supported those that would fall in the cracks and destroy everything I'm doing if they weren't helping out in those areas. And
Yep.
so, shout out to all the people who are behind the scenes making everything glow. So they're needed. So going back to the thing, one of the things that I know that you've done is that even as a director, and you've obviously done lots of different jobs, but in this choir director era, you are known for your innovative, charismatic style, right? That you would do, uh, whether it be a church or a competition or out there. Like, how did that develop? Where you were it sometimes looked like you were dancing. Sometimes it looked like you transformed your body. Sometimes it looked like you flipped upside down. Like, how did you develop that?
Oh my God.
But I've
That's
seen
the
it. I'm
first
like,
time I've
how
heard
that
it
dude
described like
be,
that.
how that dude be on his back or on
Right?
his head and still directing with the other hand or his toe. I don't know what he doing.
And do you know what's crazy? I have tried to do some of that stuff at home and cannot pull it off. It only happens if I'm standing there in the moment under the anointing, and it just happens. Even like that the Let's Dance thing where I've been back,
Hmm.
I can't do that at home. I don't know what it is about it, but I cannot do it at home. Maybe the rest of the song has to warm me up to that
There it
point,
is.
but I just ain't breaking out in no back bend. I promise you, it just does not happen.
I was like, he perfected that at home. I know he did. Nope.
Right, right. You would think, but yeah, a lot of that had to do with the performance level, because we did a lot of competition. So there is a level of performance that goes into competitions if you're going to win them. And from the competition became recording artists, so that when people started buying tickets to come see me, there's a level of performance that goes with that. Because if it's going to be what I get on Sunday morning, I may as well just wait and go to church Sunday.
Yeah.
So what you would see on a Sunday morning is different than what you would see if you paid a ticket to come see me, or to come see the choir. Because Sunday morning, I'm trying to set up for the word.
Yeah.
In concert, I am the word.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I got to be the music and the word. It all happens because it's all musical and it's all moving. So very seldom do I do that kind of stuff on a Sunday morning. Now, it may happen for New Year's Eve, or it may happen for a special occasion or whatever. But it's not an every week kind of vibe.
Well, and what would you say to the people who don't often associate church with performance? Like, I totally get this, right? Like, everything is a business on some level. Everything is a performance. You have to be mindful of how people are seen. That's also why it needs to be excellent. But I
Yeah.
think some people don't recognize the dotting of the I's across the sometimes turning it up because the lights are on, how necessary that is, even when we start to say something that is for God or in the church. Like, like, how when people think about it differently.
Uh, the word says that Jesus performed miracles. He didn't just do them and keep going. He did them in a way to where everybody's attention would gravitate to the miracle, so that they can tell the story of the miracle. If it was just about, the miracles being done, he would do them and we wouldn't know anything about them because it would just be done. But he performed the miracle. So that's a space where you live when it comes to gospel music. There's a level of performance that draws people in. And once they're drawn in, then they start listening to what you have to say. But if you come out there and you're so far deep, the people who you need to be life-changing for have already turned you off.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, when you're performing, when you're ministering, the first 5 rows is not who you want to pay attention to. Because those are the people who are on your side. They're gonna stand up for as long as the song lasts.
They had their tweeted.
Yes, yes. Check out dude in the back row that was made to come there because somebody had it was his girlfriend that made him come. Check him out to know when the song really should be over. Because what you want to do is make sure that you're impactful so that when people leave, they have a seed planted so that they say, man, I really enjoyed that, brother. And they come back.
Yeah.
You follow me? They may not have even stayed for the word at that time. But when they come back, they may stay for the word. It's all building up on top of each other.
Yeah.
But if you sing and 15 minutes later, you still singing that same song, Jesus left the building 10 minutes ago.
And that dude in the row.
Yes. That's the difference between being in self and performance. Yeah. When you're in self, you're unaware of what you're not able to read the room. Performance has a level of anointing to it.
And I would think that applies in other business sectors too, right? Like the thought of like, if you are making the presentation, if you are writing the report, for the person who's on your side, let your mistakes go, or they're gonna be over you do. But if you're making the pitch, if you're making the presentation, if you're writing a paper, if you're doing whatever, for the person who might not really be on your side, if you can convince that person that you got a good idea, then you might have a business idea. Like that is a proof. And Lonnie, you've done some really amazing things throughout your career, and I know that the choir and choir director is a portion of it. Like you've gone on to not only have radio shows, but be take over communities and cities and be syndicated. And you've not done that once. It's like LeBron back in the day. Not just one, not just two. Right? You've had multiple times when you've been able to do that. And did you see that as a part of your arc? Like, have you always thought about radio or even communicating or hosting, all these other entities and identities that you hold? Did you always see that as a part of the package?
I'm smiling because radio was a fluke.
I'm telling you, that's what I'm calling this. It was a fluke, but don't get it twisted.
It was a fluke. Let me tell you, when I lived in Chicago, there was a radio station that would broker time. So you'd pay for your own time. And I just wanted to do it to have fun to do it. So on Saturdays, I would do a 2-hour show that was from 10 to midnight. Okay. And that was just me being on the radio, having a good time. Elroy Smith and Sandra Robinson, who was over WGCI radio, largest station in Chicago, heard my 10 to midnight show and took me from that obscure station to morning drive on the gospel station in Chicago. So for the next 12 years, it was me. You're familiar with Pastor John Hanna?
I believe so.
We did the show together. Wow. We did the morning show from 6 to 10 a.m. We would go to 6 to 10 a.m. Then I would go to the school and become a dean. He would go to work and become a social worker. And it was that's how I ended up doing radio on a larger scale. And then let me tell you this, when I got syndicated in Philadelphia or from Philadelphia, I moved to Jersey for the church that I was at. That's who moved me. So when I came there, I didn't think about doing radio anymore. Elroy Smith, who was my boss in Chicago, got a promotion from Radio One and they moved him to Philadelphia.
That's just crazy.
That's who called me and said, Lonnie, come do radio again. I came just to do Philadelphia. And before I knew it, I was syndicated. I didn't even know what syndication was.
Cinda what?
I knew what the word meant, but I didn't
Yes.
know in the auspices of radio what that meant. So that's how that's why when you were asking me about it, I started smiling, because every story about me is a fluke kind of situation to where God just kind of orchestrated. Who would know that Elroy Smith would be hired out of Chicago to come to Philadelphia?
And you know about that I love is you never know who's listening. You never know who's watching, right? Like just because you decide to do it, okay. But once again, if we put all this together, which I just believe and know from what you've shared, you brought a level of excellence, you brought a level of fun, a level of who you are, and it brought the dude from the seventh row happened to be Elroy. And
Yes, yes.
he's like, I need you on my station. And like, so the thought of like, you know, to everybody, like you just never know who's paying attention. But you got to show up a certain way to make sure you pull people in. And the crazy part that you move and then he moves and it's like, hey, let's do this. That's awesome.
It was crazy, man. I am so thankful and grateful for the hand of God on my life, because I really would have only been a minister of music at the church in Jersey. That's all I would have been doing.
Yeah.
Other than, being a gospel artist, because I was already a singer when I came there.
Yeah.
But radio opened up so many other doors when people found out that, you can sing too.
Yeah.
Or they started buying records, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was just, I don't know. It blows my mind when I sit down and talk about it.
I love it because it all feeds each other, right? Like, and I think that, you know, another guest I had on a few episodes ago, Leek Yoba talked about like how sometimes we focus on growing this one talent that we have, but we miss out all the 4 or 5 other talents. And if we allow ourselves to grow that, not only can we benefit more people, he was real honest, you could also make more money, right? And so like I just hear, you know, from your core ability to be excellent, to do well, to be talented, but then you've done from you know, choir director, from singer, from musician to radio host to host. I mean, like it's expanded, so I guess that brings me to, you know, I like to ask a few questions as we wrap up. What are you doing now? Like, where are you now, and what are the things that you're involved with? What are the projects that you're working on like now?
I live in California now. And I am minister of music at Mount Calvary Baptist Church in California. Um, Outside of that, I'm getting ready to do season 3 of the Lonnie Hunter variety show. It's kind of like a Trevor Noah type show.
Nice.
So I'm getting ready to take that in January, and then in February, the new single called "Flow Like a River" is going to be released the end of February. So 2023 is a big year. I'm looking forward to it. I just got to California in March, so I'm new at this church.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I love how, you know, once again, things seem like they're stacked, right? Like you're building on one thing to the next. You know, people would all me sometimes like, you know, something happens, I put it out there, and then something it's like, yo, how are you doing all this? Well, they don't know that like usually when something is released, I'm already working on the next thing. So I'm
Right.
assuming that's probably what happens for you. like working on something that might be released 4 months.
Yeah, because you do season 3, but I do all of those shows in a weekend's worth of time. So when it airs and you're seeing it every week, I'm
Yeah.
not there.
Right. Right. You're working on the next thing.
Right.
Now you've had the ability to work with, collab with, sing with a whole bunch of people. And if you could work with and interview, like I know you've interviewed the president, I know you've like, you know, so you've been able to touch lots of different people in different ways. If you could work with anyone or collab with anybody, who would it be?
One of them just happened. which was Jacqueline Carr.
Nice.
We closed the show, the last holiday show in Houston. Um, we closed out a show together. So that was great for me. The other one is Yolanda Adams. Now, Yolanda and I are friends, like talk on the phone type friends, go out to lunch, that kind of thing. But I don't even think she knows that she's on my bucket list to sing with because we never talk about music.
Oh, now shout out to Yolanda and this collab.
Right. I'll send her the clip. She'll be
There
like,
it is.
boy, sit down. That's what she'll say.
Come on now.
Right. Yeah, but I would say those two, and then if it would have to be somebody R&B or in the secular world, it would be Brandy
Mm.
or Stevie Wonder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. And different ways, and I can only imagine how all of y'all would be cutting up. So like not only the that people would see, but the behind the scenes stories and laughter that would come out of all of that. That'd be great. With that though, you've interviewed or hosted or just been around lots of folks. What would you say has been some of the most memorable interview or experiences like professionally?
Most memorable interview, I would have to say, oddly enough, would have been Patti LaBelle.
Okay.
Because that one wasn't really about music. She was teaching me how to cook.
Nice.
So it was more intimate, just kind of
Yeah.
in her kitchen kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we showed a clip of us together years and years ago when she did something called Celebration of Gospel. The thing about Patti LaBelle is she never learns the words.
Yes.
Right. And on this particular thing, I was doing background. This was before I met her. I was doing background and she was the artist. And we were doing Who's on the Lord's Side? Where do you stand? Who's on the Lord's side? And she was singing and we got to the verse and the camera was on my face for some reason. And you could tell on my face from being a choir director that I was so frustrated with her not knowing these words.
To know these words.
I was standing there like, I know you didn't just say that sentence. That's not no place even in the song. And years later, when we met, I showed her that clip.
Yes.
She hollered. She was like, Lonnie, I'm gonna tell you, I don't never know the words.
She goes this so long. I mean, like, look, love and props to Miss Patti LaBelle, but how like she has kept a career not knowing the words.
Because of her performance level.
That's right.
She can get through a song and unless you know the song, you will never know that she messed up because she makes it her own, and she's a professional, and she's in her 70s. Her and Gladys Knight
Oh
looked
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm seeing them everywhere, like you said, from their own like shows that they might have there, but now more TV and media appearances as well as like being a performer and being out there. So shout out to them. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
So so great. So I like to ask people these last two questions uh, as a way of just kind of understanding them even a little bit more. As we've talked about a lot, you've done a lot, been through a lot, and I'm wondering, how would you define mental wellness? Like, what does mental wellness mean to you?
Um, it starts with mental awareness. So you have to be in a place where you can be honest with yourself about how things affect you. You hear people say a lot, I have a thick skin, or it's like water off a duck's back. You have to know and be honest with yourself to know when that stops and when something really does hurt you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that you can deal with it, because that you just attribute to having a thick skin to and try to keep moving, it sets up camp, and stuff starts, over the years, just starts layering on top of that. And before you know it, you've got kidney stones or you've got, gallbladder issues or anything. And you're like, where did that come from? that stress
Yeah.
of that whole thing of trying to make yourself seem like you've got it all together and you're perfect. Yeah, that's a very dangerous place to live. Now, of course, you don't want to give everybody your information or tell everybody your business, but it is absolutely essential that you have somebody in your life that you trust that does not care what you do.
Yeah.
They care about you.
Yeah.
They don't care about what you do. They care about you. And that person or persons, maybe two at the most, are the people you want to talk to, because a lot of times when people know the big you,
Hmm.
it's hard for them to zone into an issue you might have because they're looking at you through a lens of, oh my God, I'm talking to this person.
Yeah.
You don't want that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
want somebody that can see past all of the layers and get to whatever the issue is. And sometimes it's family members because they've grown up with you. So just like, and sometimes it's your kids if they're grown, because they're past the stardom situation,
Yeah.
but you have to have that. And people without that end up in some dangerous, dangerous places.
Yeah, I'm glad it's one of the reasons even part of my career has shifted over the years to do that, right? To help this whole point, right? Leaders, athletes, entertainers, performers. Because often I find those folks who are known, and whether it's known in the community or known out, at large, that they often don't have a place where they could just be. And they
Yeah.
always have to, instead of turning on the switch to perform because it's a situation, that switch is always on. They have to feel, they feel like they have to always perform or be something to other people, versus being able to be aware or to talk about what's going on, or for someone to just see through all of that stuff and say, I see you. I
Yeah.
know something going on. Talk to me.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm glad that you said that. What would be your mental wellness advice to your younger self? And that could be any point from yesterday to any time in the past.
My mental wellness advice to my younger self would be, you're enough.
Yeah.
Because coming up in an industry, and people don't believe that it's like this, but in an industry that's so competitive and so based on what you can do vocally. uh, I'm gonna say this, and I want to make sure I position it right. In the gospel music industry, people have a misconception that the higher you can sing, the better you are.
Mm.
So you find people who do a lot of screaming,
Yeah.
but the response to that scream is always overwhelming. Oh, that's great because they're so high. And if you're somebody that doesn't have that, it may make you think that you're less of a singer
Yeah.
because you can't do that. And in my younger self, before I was able to develop, vocal techniques to do some other stuff, I would always down myself or downplay myself and give
Yeah.
somebody else the lead,
Yeah.
because I just thought, oh, that's too high. Oh, that's
Mm.
too high. That kind of thing. Because I was coming up in the Daryl Coleys and the
Yeah.
Walter Hawkins,
Oh,
and they started in alto. So
yeah.
if you sing one of those songs,
Daryl Coley will riff for like 10 minutes.
yes, and it'd be good.
Right.
I would riff for 10 minutes and be totally lost by the time I got to minute number 3. Like, what song is this?
Then you kick off your shoe, you'll be all right.
Right. You have to perform it out.
Right. Right. No, but I appreciate, what you said with that, because I think we all could tell ourselves you are enough. And I think that what you supply so many places, right? How many times do we give up the lead, right? How are we not the main character in our own movie, right? We give up that role to somebody else, or we shy away because we think that we're not enough. And it's a great moment when you can say I'm enough, or can believe it, and then start to star in your own movie,
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
the soloist in your own song.
yeah.
Is a great. I really appreciate you highlighting that. That's important.
And I'm enough does not translate to um, arrogance.
Yeah.
It just translates to a place to where you are able to keep yourself in the game.
Yeah.
So I'm enough, but I can get better.
Yeah.
I'm enough, but I can still rehearse.
That's
I'm
right.
enough, but I can still, you know what I'm saying? Put the time in. It's not I'm enough and I'm all that. Just call me when it's time to do it.
Mm-mm.
Not that kind of I'm enough.
No,
Right.
no, because once again, we don't know who's watching, don't know who's listening, and just being able to be aware of that as you put in the time and you realize
Absolutely.
that you're enough. That's what turns a fluke to a lifelong career.
That's the truth.
I,
That is
I
truth.
love it. So, all right, last thing I want to ask you. All right, so since the last time we've really fully interacted, right? I just didn't know it. Dr. Lonnie, tell me about it. How did that happen? Whoa. I know that you've always been in education. You've always been in like himself and growing in multiple ways. So say more about that.
My earned degree level is master's. The doctorate is honorary.
Nice.
And that came out of the life experience, the community development, the impact on the community. So the university um, did an honorary
That's nice.
doctorate.
That's
That's
all.
why you don't hear me say a lot of times, Dr. Lonnie Hunter.
Yeah.
Uh, because people give you so many titles. I'll be like, just call me Lonnie.
Right,
Pastor,
right,
bishop, doc, blah. I'll be like, I don't want all of that. I just want to be Lonnie. Because where I
Yep.
am now, they just found out that I'm a minister.
Mm.
So because up to now they were either just calling me Lonnie or Brother Hunter, and I was in heaven.
Yeah. Right. Right. There are ways that like what people put on us can be sometimes too much or overwhelming. And
Yes,
but I love and your way of how you've navigated all those things. But I appreciate you being on today. I appreciate you sharing your
great.
experience and your story. And before I close out, I just want to know, is there any last thoughts or words that you want to share before we wrap?
3 words: get it done.
Yes.
That's what I'm all about. And I'm not talking about in the gym. I'm just talking about whatever your it is. Get it done. So your it is not mine. Mine is not yours. But we both have to do the bridge work.
Yeah.
Get it. The only thing about get is understand where you're trying to go. Done is the easy part because you're already living in the favor. But it's the smallest word in the group. It takes the most amount of work because that's the bridge from where you are to where you want to be. It's the it. So find out what your it is and get it done.
Love it. Lonnie, I appreciate you being a part and being here, encouraging others. And I love the fact that what might seem when you add gift, work, uh, prayer, turns into multiple streams of income and impact. Yeah. And so I wish you success and the things that you do. And I'm glad that we were.
Appreciate you, man. Love you, Doc.
Wow. What an incredible ride we just went on with another great member of the Leapcast community. I appreciate you listening and hope you got some tangible value from the episode. Please let us know what you think by leaving a comment, rating, and review. As always, please don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. This is Dr. George James, and I'll see you next time.